Hi, this is Natalia and I'm going to talk about self-reg step 1, reframing. Mostly I'm going to talk about how stress influences emotions and behavior. But before we do, I'd like to tell you about the 5 steps of the Schenker method of self-reg, which you can do in any given order you like, which is suited to the situation. But there is one step that you actually cannot do without. Read and reframe the behavior. This is the step that opens the door to the rest of the steps, which are recognize the stressors, reduce the stress, reflect, and respond. So, first of all, think about your child's behaviors which get on your nerves, which make you worried about your child's future, which seem like purposeful misbehavior, which you wish your child wouldn't do, or which make you think your child lacks control and discipline. Okay, think for a while. The things that, well, get on your nerves, basically. You can even make a list, because we might want to come back to it later. You may stop the video and make a list if you like, and we'll go on in a minute. Okay? And also think of your interventions in these cases when the child behaves in the way you don't like the child to behave, right? And how do they work for you? How do they work for you in the short term when it happens? And how do they work for you in the long term? So does the behavior actually stop for a long time? Does the child learn? Okay? And well, you may also like to make notes, so you may stop the video and make a list of the thoughts you have. Well, if they work for you, then it's fine. If they don't, let's think about reframing. What if you saw these situations in a different frame, in a different light, through a different lens, softer and calmer, let's say? I think we need to distinguish between misbehavior and stress behavior. You probably think about those situations as misbehavior. Misbehavior is when the prefrontal cortex or the blue brain is running the show, and the child could have acted differently, was aware that she or he shouldn't have done it, and was completely capable of acting differently. What if it's another case? If it's stress behavior, when the part of the brain which is running the show is the limbic system, the red brain, the emotional brain, then the child is not fully aware of what they are doing, or not fully aware of why they are doing it, and or has limited capacity to act differently. Then would it be a bit different? Well, depending on the level of energy and stress, we have all those stress reactions. If you have a lot of energy and the stress is basically not very high, you go into social engagement. If energy is a bit lower and stress is a bit higher, you go into fight or flight. If stress is even deeper and the energy falls, it freeze. And the last phase, when the stress is tremendous and you've got basically no energy or very little energy, you can go into dissociation. Why is that important? Because in the stress response, in the stress behavior, the child goes into fight or flight. What does it mean? It means that stress behaviors are behaviors which a child cannot control. Just because the stress is too high and they've got too low energy, and the part of the brain which is responsible for thinking, for being rational, is actually switched off. So you're basically like a caveman, let's say, and your sympathetic system works full spring, right? It's just going there and doing all those things that might have worked in like caveman time, but they don't really work anymore today. So a child might hit someone or run away from someone or do something completely out of today's times. So stress behavior is actually when you're left with the evolutionary older and more primitive parts of the brain in control, and the sympathetic nervous system is fully on. And sometimes it may even happen that you get stuck. If stress is too high and energy levels too low constantly, you may run out of the energy to switch on the parasympathetic system, which restores energy, which is actually a bit like you've run out of gas a few miles from the nearest gas station. What does it mean? Then it's actually when mood and behavior disorders appear, different problems like sleep problems or depression or anxiety or oppositional disorder and so on and so forth. Okay. So now think again about your child's behaviors which get on your nerves, which make you worried about your child's future, seem like done on purpose, and it's misbehavior you wish your child wouldn't do, and which make you think your child lacks control and discipline. And think again, if you saw them as stress behaviors, how would that change your view of the child? How would that make you feel? Reframe. This is reframing. And what's more, if you look through the same lens also at yourself, at your impulses, at your emotions, at your own behaviors as a parent, how would that change the situation? You may stop again the video and think for a while, look through the list and see, does anything change when you look through a different lens at yourself and at your child? And just to give you an example, for example, we treat lying as a total misbehavior, and it's actually true. Lying is misbehavior. Lying serves to avoid punishment, and it's kind of an infantile instinct. Okay, and then basically when you're lying, your prefrontal cortex is running the show. You actually think of things to say, but sometimes it's very difficult to distinguish between lying and confabulating. And confabulating is actually a stress behavior. When the child maybe starts with lying, but with our own reactions as parents, as teachers, we sometimes push too hard. When we suspect the child is lying, then we push them to tell the truth, and actually when we start pushing, we may push the kid with our own limbic arousal because we are angry about lying. We may push them into stress behavior, and then confabulating starts. Okay, the child may actually believe what they're saying, or they work very hard to run the show, right? But still, lying and confabulating is energy taking. So it's, well, let's think of a few more examples of when we run out of energy and we cannot deal with the high stress. For example, in school or at home, when the kid is doing homework, a child may find it difficult to focus, which is a typical stress reaction. They may seem like they won't listen. So actually we very often treat it as a misbehavior when it's stress behavior, because the brain chooses to hear the sounds from the environment which may be threatening. It's a kind of evolutionary thing. And actually you really don't hear the voices, okay? You cannot distinguish the voices, you cannot hear the words, because you're in fight or flight, okay? You cannot hear it. Also, when the child easily gets nervous about trivial things and finds it difficult to calm down, the typical meltdowns are the sign when stress is too high and energy too low, okay? And this is a typical situation when it's difficult for a parent to keep calm in such a situation and not think that the child is, playing with us and putting up a show or something like this. So think again, change the frame. The emotional roller coaster is also another thing. We basically don't treat it as misbehavior, although maybe sometimes it's kind of a surprise for parents, that the child goes from 0 to 100, or is very happy at one moment and the next is anxious or sad or something like this. And this is also a difficult part for the parent to understand what is really happening. It's a stress behavior. When the child is extremely overwhelmed by emotions like fear, sadness, anger, or they last a long time, it's also stress. Being grumpy, it's also stress. And all those things like hitting, like bullying at school, all those things that seem like misbehavior, talking to a teacher or a parent, I don't care, things like that may also be stress behavior, not really misbehavior. So especially these ones are difficult to put in the frame of stress behavior, but we need to do that. We need to try to see those behaviors as stress behavior, and ask the questions why and why now. Why this kid? Why now? Also, another thing which we frequently, think about the child, like giving them a label. Actually, it's not really like misbehavior, but we're giving the child a label, and this is stress, a stress sign. A child who's extremely shy and withdraws. Okay, we tend to push these kids into the group, but sometimes we may need to look at it through different lens and to see what is really underneath, below. Another sign of stress is when the child craves junk food and sweets. And not only a child, it's us who do that too. And the last one, I think, is trouble going to sleep or waking up frequently at night. This is a situation when we think a child won't go to sleep, refuses to go to sleep, which may actually mean that they've got trouble winding down from the very busy day, and the day might have been stressful, and it's there are those kids who cannot really make it easy on the parent, and the parent is tired, and we also need to reframe the parent emotions. And now I'd like you to think of any other situations when you could reframe impulses, emotions, and behaviors, your own or your child's, and think how would that change your emotions, how would that change your thinking, and how would that change your reaction. And then you might want to experiment with the next steps of self-reg. Because the journey starts with reframing. You start asking why and why now, and then it opens the way to to recognizing the stressors, to playing the detective, to reducing the stressors so that you come back from the fight or flight to social engagement. And then, when the child is calm enough and when you are calm enough, you can reflect upon the stressors, you can reflect on the signals, and you can reflect on ways which make you feel calm. So, you need to enhance stress awareness. And the last step from the five is respond. Develop personal strategies to reduce tension and restore energy. So, think of a long term plan. Think of what might fill your tank, what might fill the child's tank, right? But the first thing you need to do is read and reframe the behavior. And you actually, when you do it very often, when you start doing it, it's like a bit superficial. But when you do it very often, it starts being natural. And then it's like going from the head to the heart. So let's go. And I'd like to end the presentation with a quote from Stuart Shanker. See a child differently, you see a different child. Thanks for your attention.